Hey everyone, welcome to Judging for the Win. I'm Dave, and this is my daily ruling. Not everybody will know this, but I used to write a blog that was focused on rules and policy content. Every December, I would have my annual No Mercy Rules Challenge, where I invited people to submit the weirdest, most counterintuitive rulings that they were familiar with, and at the end I would pick my favorite one. This ruling that I'm giving today has a special place in my heart because it was the winner of the first such No Mercy Rules Challenge. Alright, here it is. Amy plays Gemstone Mine while she controls Doubling Season. How many counters in total are placed on Gemstone Mine? Alright, so your first impulse might be to say, why is this even a 4-star question? The answer is obviously 6, right? How could it be anything else? And, well, that would make a lot of sense, but let's look at things a little bit more critically, shall we? First of all, let's closely examine what it says on Doubling Season. It says if an effect would put counters on a permanent you control. Now, you probably already know that Gemstone Mine enters the battlefield with 3 mining counters on it, does qualify as a replacement effect. So it seems like we've got an open and shut case, right? We've got a replacement effect putting counters on a permanent we control, so therefore the Doubling Season should apply to it, right? But if you think a little bit more, you might think of something else. Recall how replacement effects actually function. Anytime something is about to happen in the game, the replacement effect looks and sees that that's about to happen. Then it replaces that event with a completely different one. It modifies the existing event into a new one. Now, why is that important? Well, if you think about that, then you'll know that the replacement effect isn't the thing that's actually putting counters onto the permanent you control. Rather, what's actually happening is the replacement effect is changing what happens as a result of the thing that's already going to happen in the game, and it modifies that to include some counters getting put onto a permanent you control. It's subtle, but the end result is that the replacement effect is not the actual direct cause of counters getting put onto the permanent you control. If you remember, I did a video a few months ago where I talked about the interaction between Reign of Gore and Words of Worship, and you had the same sort of logic applying there. You can take a look at that video if you're interested in some more details. So what's the significance of all this? I mean, you also probably already know that if you were to play something like an Arcbound Worker, then it would get its counter doubled just fine. So how would that fit into everything here? And in order to answer that, we're going to need to know exactly what the game defines as an effect. So here we are. This is the definition that the comprehensive rules gives. An effect is anything that happens in the game as a result of a resolving spell or ability. So if you were to play an Arcbound Worker spell, then when that spell resolves, then you're going to have a permanent entering the battlefield. And the replacement effect that takes effect then is going to modify that event to say the permanent enters the battlefield with counters on it. Now, the effect is a resolving Arcbound Worker spell, and that effect now includes counters being put onto a permanent you control. So Doubling Season will see that and interact with it just fine. Now you might start to see where the issue is. You see, if we were having this Gemstone Mine enter the battlefield as a result of a spell or ability, like for example if we were to activate a Sakura Tribe Scout, well then we would have an effect that was getting modified by the replacement effect in order to include counters being put onto a permanent that we control. However, what we actually have here in the original problem statement is a land play that's getting modified to put counters onto a permanent that we control. A land play definitely does not count as a resolving spell or ability, so it doesn't seem like this would actually qualify as, in effect, putting counters onto a permanent that we control. Remember, the replacement effect isn't actually putting counters on Gemstone Mine. The replacement effect is modifying an event that's in the game to include putting counters on Gemstone Mine. And whether that thing that we're modifying happens to be an event or an effect, well, that would be a really big difference in how the Doubling Season would interact with that. Now, if I was making this video at the same time that I originally wrote about this ruling, then that would be the end of it. We don't have an effect putting counters on a permanent that we control, so there's nothing for Doubling Season to replace. Now, fortunately for us, someone at the Wizards of the Coast rules team must have become familiar with this ruling and sought to fix it, because we actually got a change to the comprehensive rules that makes it so that this ruling works the way that any sane person would think that it should. This is the rule that I'm talking about here. You see, any replacement effect that's worded like Doubling Seasons is going to apply anytime it sees something that's in effect putting counters on a permanent you control, just like we talked about before. However, this rule in the comprehensive rules also says that these will indeed apply in the case where any game event gets modified by a replacement effect in order to put counters on a permanent that you control. So it's kind of a kludgy solution, but it bakes the complexity into the comprehensive rules where people probably aren't going to see it, and it fixes it so that the ruling works the way that every normal person would think that it should. The only real downside is that if someone were to come across this rule independently without knowing what the background or the history behind it was, then I could imagine they would probably get extremely confused and be really hard pressed to come up with some sort of a situation where it was supposed to apply in. But now you know the rest of the story. And I hope everybody isn't too mad at me that this 4-star question had a really obvious answer after you hear what really hardcore rules technology is going on underneath the hood in order to get the answer to be what everybody always thought that it should be in the first place. But that's all I have for you today. How did you do? Join me again tomorrow for another daily ruling, but until then, I hope you have a great day.